13, this is the rescission of the formation of the Council Finance Ad Hoc Committee that occurred on February 21st, 2024, which was a special joint meeting of the City Council and the Finance Commission. During the City Council's discussion at that meeting, there was a discussion of the 5-year financial forecast, and a member of the Council proposed an ad hoc committee to study, review, and analyze the city's finances and operations in light of the projections that were presented by NHA advisors regarding the city's long-term financial health. I was asked at the time whether an ad hoc would be a Brown Act body, and I said it would not be, as it was less than a quorum, with a limited scope, and was not created by formal action. The intent that evening was not to create a Brown Act body, but to provide flexibility to the committee to review the matter, and there was no intent not to be transparent. Initially, we received correspondence from a member of the public stating that his belief was that the ad hoc that was created was a Brown Act body, and thus the ad hoc committee should conduct itself as such, where meetings would be posted and noticed and open to the public. And there was no objection by anyone on the ad hoc committee with respect to that. However, subsequently, a few days later, the city received what's called a formal notice to cure and correct under the terms of the Brown Act, or the provisions of the government code, I should say, which alleged a Brown Act violation. The basis for that cure and correct is that the city took formal action to create this Council Finance Ad Hoc Committee, and that this was not an item listed on the posted agenda, where it should have been. So generally, ad hoc committees of a legislative body are formed organically, as I said that evening, or really spontaneously as part of the discussion that occurs as part of an agendized item. Generally, it's not agendized separately because it just happens to, come up when we're speaking about different things. Again, the intent wasn't to create such a committee, but since a demand for a cure and correct was received, and such a demand is a prerequisite for filing a lawsuit. In order to avoid unnecessary litigation, I am recommending that the City Council move forward with the cure and correct, and that we would undertake the action.
I think the question I have is, if we do this, and we're doing this first, and we don't reconstitute this committee, then really what's happened is there's been one could argue that this has all been a 3 or 4 letter procedure to just take down this committee.
The tone of the first letter was much different than the actual formal letter under the provisions of the government code under the Brown Act.
So again, I think limiting exposure, it would not be great if the committee was not reconstituted as a Brown Act body and meeting publicly.
I think moving forward to limit exposure is to rescind the formation of this, of what occurred on February 21st. And then the next item would be a discussion of reforming, for lack of a better term, but I want to make clear it's to start anew. It's to...
I understand it's to start anew, but if that doesn't go forward for some reason, it strikes me that this series of letters has really acted to disband this committee and upend the original intent of the City Council, and in fact, upend the committee who was interested in meeting publicly. Okay, I just want to make that clear.
I will entertain a motion if there's no public comment.
I moved it. Seconded.
Roll call, please.
Councilmember Braun?
Yes.
Councilmember Cacciuti?
Yes.
Councilmember Primith?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Donovan?
Yes.
Mayor Znaimer?
Yes.
Thank you, Mayor. The next item would be a discussion and action for the creation and scope of an advisory committee to review the city's finances and operations in light of the 5-year financial forecast. As part of the cure and correct, the cure we just did, and now is the correct. And so this action is a separate action from the one that you took previously. And this agenda report is to allow the City Council to create this advisory committee to review the city's finances and operations. The proposed advisory committee would be a legislative body that is subject to the Brown Act. Its agendas would be posted, its meetings would be open to the public, and the advisory committee would serve to provide recommendations to the city council. There would be no final decision-making authority by the advisory committee. And once the advisory committee's work is completed, we would bring it back and dissolve it. And I'm
Discussion.
So I strongly support reconstituting this committee with the same members. A month has passed since our February 21st meeting when we got some reports and some, pretty strong financial news. I think the committee was really trying to do some really good work. I just want to also say that I had over 3 hours today with our city manager, our assistant city manager, and our finance director, and the finance department. I think we're making some very good progress on some of the things that we've been asking for as a committee, that the committee has been asking for. I think we're starting to understand what the committee is looking for. And I'm hoping that information that we all talked about today gets given to the committee, and I think it's going to answer a lot of questions. So I think there's a lot of positive movement on solving this, but I do think the committee will be helpful in kind of processing all of that and bringing it back to this council. So I would strongly support reconstituting this committee ad hoc. I'm not sure it's going to meet that many times, to be honest with you. I don't think it's going to be a lot of extra burden, and I think it's going to be very valuable.
Councilmember Caccioli.
I'll hold my comments for later.
Councilmember Primus.
Yeah, I'm not going to support reconstituting the committee for a number of reasons. I think we saw kind of the product at the last council meeting, and I just have some real problems with how the committee went about presenting it. First of all, we weren't able to pass the mid-year budget, and then weeks later they came and said, well, what staff's asking for is reasonable. But there was no recommendation that we pass the mid-year budget, the mid-year requests. And instead, there was a whole list of things that they still wanted to look at, and they wanted to hold that mid-year while they look at budget. A number of the things they were asking for, quite frankly, had a very strong political agenda behind it. It went beyond what the initial council had talked about for what they should be doing. And in the discussion, there was certainly comments about looking to the past. That had some political overtones to it. And then the commissioner who defended what the committee was asking for stood up and made 2 or 3 statements about the budget that I went and fact-checked, and they were completely wrong. Completely false information, misrepresenting to the council. And I realized I can't have confidence in that commissioner. Now, she's just one of 4, but she just stood at public comment and made it seem like she was the decision maker for the committee by saying she would agree to hold public meetings. Well, she's only one of 4. How would she agree to that? So I think between the political slant that was happening, holding up the mid-year that they admitted was reasonable after we asked them to take a look at it, and coming with a lot of proposals that, quite frankly, were not well developed, felt like things were going off track in a way that the whole council was not going to be able to keep up with. So I agree with one thing that Sheila said, and let's solve the problems together. Let's look at the financial problems together. I'd rather the council together work on the budget, do the deep dives on the lighting and landscape maintenance district, do the deep dives on all the things that the ad hoc was proposing. We can have special meetings on this. I don't think the ad hoc committee output was worth it. I think it's going to divide staff time and attention. And quite frankly, the ad hoc did not involve staff, sidelined staff, ignored staff, closed-door meetings without staff. And even when those misrepresentations about the budget came before council, staff was shaking their heads, finance director walked out in disgust. because there wasn't a sliver of interest in hearing from our finance director about whether the accusations from Commissioner Rossi were accurate or not, and they were not. Not even allowing your finance director to weigh in on a major charge against the city and its finances, I think shows a very poor process. I'd like to restore it back on a track. Let's have council involved. Let's do some special meetings. I don't think we need to have an ad hoc working on this. We all need to get involved. Jack, you said you wanted to step up and get involved. This is a way we can do that.
Mayor Pro Tem.
I just don't see any need for an advisory committee. I don't really think I need to say any more than that.
Councilmember Cacciuri.
Mayor, thank you. I 100% agree with Councilmember Primuth and Mayor Pro Tem. We don't need a duplicative body. I've seen the council over 20 years, Finance Commission, when they were established several, a dozen or so years ago, and Jeff Burke and others, Phil Putnam established it. I've seen them work closely with the council. Why do we need another body that's taking up unwarranted pressure and pressuring staff, causing anxiety, causing staff to leave to other cities? The tone of the communications by some of these individuals? I totally agree with Mr. Primuth. There's been distortions, misrepresentations. I've seen it today in other communications earlier in the meeting, and now I believe it because they were totally baseless. So I see these communications. I've sat down with the finance department, finance director, and I agree with Mr. Primuth and Jack 100%. These are a waste of time, a waste of our resources. We're losing employees or the tone in the community attacking our staff. We've got incredible staff. Every single department. I've been here 20-some years. This is the best staff we've ever had. And I hope they don't leave because you've got my support and majority of the council support 100%. So from this time on, Jack, we're going to spend time. The whole council is going to be in public. We're all going to be here, look at the same facts, and let staff come back to us with their recommendations. Why do you have recommendations from staff, from this committee, have more meetings with staff? We're going to lose a finance director, one of the best in the state, because we're killing them with, give me this report, give me that report, I want this. I worked as a staff member, as a line deputy attorney general for 20 years, Caltrans attorney for 10. I've seen the legislature demand this, demand that, and you had people leaving, great jobs, career employees at the DOJ. So I don't want any more of our career employees to leave this city. I want to support our officers. And the more we talk about, there is a problem with every state in the United States. The state budget is $40 to $80 billion deficit. It's impacting every school district, every city in the state. Every city is going through this. Sorry, 90% of the cities. I've seen it ebb and flow over the years. I looked at the entire reserves, and Josh Beatty gave this to me about 2005 or 6. There was times in the 70s where the city had minus reserves, several times in the 70s, because they were fighting a freeway, taking money from the water and sewer system, and it was horrendous. We're not at that point. We're at a point we can steer the ship responsibly, logically. Let's do that. Let's not renew this committee. It's unwarranted. It's a waste of time. It's a waste of effort, and it's hurting our staff morale.
I would like to yield to Councilmember Braun to do her rebuttal if she wishes.
I think this is a big mistake. You've got financial professionals in our community volunteering their time who bring a lot of expertise on these matters. I think today we made progress, but we haven't seen financial statements in 9 months. And that was the problem. That was the problem. February 21st happened. We have approved a $2.2 million budget. I even said last June I did it on a leap of faith. And I said, please continue working with the Finance Commission. And there were a lot of obstructions there, and we can argue about who's at fault or whatever. Let's not go there. But then on February 16th, we get a $3.7 million budget deficit and 5-year projections, which we asked for, that showed insolvency in 3 to 6 years. So, to my mind, by the way, just a reminder, in 2023 year, the budget was a $500,000 surplus, and that ended up, per the ACFR, as a $1 million loss. So we are on track for 2 years in a row to be negative to our budget at $1.5 million. So I was very heartened by sort of a lot of things that were on. We've asked for, what do you want to cut? So the list that the committee got was charge AYSO, charge Little League, get rid of the concerts in the park, it was all cuts to services. It was no other cuts. So, when you talk about the committee was worthless and did nothing, I'm really offended by that. I think we did a lot. We asked for a lot of things. Pete Giuliani came here who was an amazing professional, and he was just trying to tell you we needed more information, we needed more additional items, we needed the financials, the actual financial statements that we had not gotten in 9 months, which is a violation of our finance policies. So I guess I just don't understand. I just don't understand why we are so afraid to let people look into the financials of this city. I'm dumbfounded.
Question. Are you offended by the false statements that Commissioner Rossi gave us?
Well, you have to identify what the false statements are.
29 of the positions in the recruitments are not budgeted. You have to add $3 million to the deficit.
So I'll tell you one thing. I just learned today, because we didn't know. We didn't know, and the committee, there were items, there's authorized positions, there's 173 authorized positions. And so I just learned today that not all of those are budgeted, only some are budgeted. So the question is, there's budgeted positions and authorized positions. Not all your authorized positions are in the budget. So and that was very confusing. So we were asking those questions, like, what's the difference? And so then you say, if you don't hire all of the budgeted positions, there are savings. If you hire all of the authorized positions, yes, you are going to have a deficit because they're not all in the budget. So I don't know that that's a misrepresentation. I think it's confusing.
I think a lot of the points that you make need to be debated, need to be aired. We need to have staff input on it. With regard to what I heard at the last meeting, at the very end of the finance ad hoc, there was no interest in having staff reply with any context. Staff was shaking their heads. Finance director walked out. It was irrelevant. These charges of $3 million that you have to add to the budget deficit, crazy. You'd think there'd be some interest in hearing staff on that. There wasn't. So let's have staff involved. Let's have the full council involved. Let's look at that issue. But the problem is having a group go off who believes certain things that I don't think are true and do more advanced budget work. I just don't have confidence in that. You have to bring it back and have me vote. And what I've seen was not impressive. I didn't say it was worthless. I didn't say it was nothing. It just wasn't the output I needed. So don't put words in my mouth. I respect the people putting in the effort. I just didn't see the output there. And I was really worried when those accusations came down and there was not a shred of interest in getting proper context from staff.
My turn. Last year, it was very clear the direction of Council Member Braun is that she was conditioning her approval. I did not approve that budget on a condition that a 5-year, you continue to work with the budget to close the gap and have a 5-year financial projection. That was specifically directed to staff. Well, the first, Bill Statler was hired for $17,000. It turned out that his work was rejected by the Finance Commission. And then all of a sudden, I saw the budget. He was paid actually an additional of $7,000 to create a report that was said that it was a baseline for the subsequent financial advisor, NHA, which is false. Because we never, council, I saw the hearing again, we never directed staff to explore or hire somebody to do a baseline, but the NHA advisors cost us $29,500, just well below city manager's authorized limit. So I consider that a breach, an overreach, and staff overstep, because I consider that a serialized contract that, when taken together, is actually beyond the authority of the city manager. So that was one. I did not find that really financially prudent. That's a waste of time and money, where we could have given those $14,000 as a raise to our employees. But no. The second item that I'm going to bring is that former Mayor Primuth, you left me with a bag of $3.7 million deficit. You left your term with a $2.2 million deficit. I expected that the delta would be close to zero or give me a balanced budget. Instead, I'm holding a bag of $3.7 million deficit. I didn't feel good at that, and I don't have any confidence. And I'm really offended that the body of council members, we are stewards and we are elected by our residents to manage our budget, not cut services. We exist as a city to provide our residents services. But no, we were shut down. And it's when you take the projections of NHA advisors, they presented two scenarios, the regular one and the recession. Well, one thing that struck really a very, very heart of me is that the NHA advisors, they were the best in the nation, said if we continue to have this spending and it exceeds our revenues, we will be insolvent in 3 to 6 years. They might say, well, that's just a projection. Well, it's an indicative of if we insist on that spending trend. I don't want to be like the city of Bell. I don't want to be bankrupt. But this is the disconnect. Staff continues to spend as they wish because they said that the council never voted and directed them to do a hiring freeze. So we will continue to spend money like water. So they're using the budget as a shopping list to continue spending. We don't have that kind of money. I mean, it's, for example, the city of Azusa, they started with a 2.2 million deficit. Well, today they have a 47 million surplus. Well, I wanted my city to have a surplus. So creating this finance ad hoc committee would add layer to the checks and balances to get a healthy city. But we are outvoted by 3-2, it's, again, I think it's gender bias, really. The finance commissioners are the experts. And I respect them. They spend a lot of time. I don't know how many inordinate hours did Ms. Rossi and Mr. Giuliani spent analyzing the data that we have, but we didn't have enough financial documents to make a recommendation. That's why we had a preliminary slideshow telling the entire public and city council that we need more documents. But instead, I think Mr. Elsner's letter is a pretext to disband to silence the Finance Ad Hoc Committee. And I'm really very disappointed.
I haven't heard anything to change my mind. You've said a lot of things that I think are incorrect. So asking for my support for the two of
I'm not
you
asking for your support, John.
to be on the ad hoc, it's not persuasive to me.
Well,
So, I obviously disagree with the majority on this issue, but I do want to say a couple things. At heart, I'm a problem solver, and I do want to say, and I do want to thank Director John Downs, because I think and I communicated this to Armene and Dom and to John today. One of the problems that identified by the ad hoc committee was we hadn't gotten actual financial statements. I think there was a disconnect between staff talks and budget, and we were looking for actual financials, and there was a disconnect there. I think John heard that and put together, unfortunately, the software, and it's a long story, but the software, nobody can believe that an accounting software in the year 2024 can't produce a QuickBooks-style financial statement of actual financials. So that was leading to some disbelief that it was hard to believe that we couldn't do that. We hadn't seen actual financials in 9 months. So we'll get more on that later, but Stephanie and Esteban came and said, well, we went to this conference and we have, Springbrook 7.0 when they're and the current version was version 17.0. We were 10 versions behind 2 years ago. Now we're at 17.0. They just went to the conference. We're the only one of 2 cities that's not on a cloud-based version of an ERP system. So, okay, we understand that. The point is, John has put together a spreadsheet on consolidating the data so that we can get actual financial statements. He's done it by department. I've asked him to do not only by department with actual financials and variance to budget, but also be able to collapse that into a summary. And that will be the financial statements that we haven't been receiving. And so now that he's put that work in, and Sheila Rossi and Pete Giuliani also put in work to do it on their own things, but we now got that resource in the city. I think that's been the root of the issue. And I think that's why the mid-years haven't been approved, because nobody really knew what the actual financial condition of the city was. Number 2, on the sort of short-term issues, and I've talked to Armene about this, is we got 2 issues. We got the short term, what do we do to limit the damage between now and June 30th? Because the old estimate was $3.7 million deficit. So what do you do to contain the damage till June 30th? I think Armene's got some good ideas.
Would you support scheduling a special meeting, a study session, so we can hear from staff on the issues that you've raised?
I'd say that, or I'd say it to the Finance Commission, one or the other. But somebody needs to hear this. I think she's got some good ideas. She and Dom have put together. Maybe a joint meeting, has got some really great ideas and they showed me a list. They've sat down, I think, all of the staff about what could be cut, what hires could be delayed. It's all the things that we were hoping for as the ad hoc committee, right? That was the reason for the hiring pause, is that because we didn't have that information, it's like, well, just hold on. That's the responsible thing to do. So it wasn't, anyway, the point is, I think we are going to be moving forward. I'm extremely disappointed that we're not going to, well, it doesn't look like the votes to reconstitute the commission. I think that Mr. Elsner's series of 4 letters was absolutely designed to disband this committee, and he succeeded. Since he's so successful, his letter also wants to go to the sheriff's department and get rid of the police department. So I'd be a little careful because that's in his last public letter. So that's just a heads up to everybody. So anyway, that's all I have to say. I think we can move forward, but I'm extremely disappointed.
You know, even though we disagree, I think we all have a good purpose and mission in mind. We want to balance the budget. We want to get there short-term, long-term. We want to protect our employees so we don't go bankrupt like some cities have. And we're going there. We just have minor differences of opinion. Some of us don't want an extra committee. Some of us do. You guys are great. You're talented. You two are incredibly talented. You'll uncover every stone. We've got great finance people out here. But let's just move forward. I'll make a motion that we're not going to create an advisory committee to review the city's finances and operations in light of the 5-year financial forecast and discuss scope, et cetera. But I would also like staff to come back to us with a joint meeting where we really get these that you brought up and you and Evelyn brought up. They've got to be answered. I'm sorry, I just don't agree with this other committee, but I'd like to call for the question now.
Councilmember Cacciati, I mean, there's no reason to make a negative
Do
motion.
we have to? What do you
Because those who want to propose a motion, don't have the votes,
I would
forward.
propose that we reconstitute the Finance Ad Hoc Committee made up of Peter Giulioni, Sheila Rossi from the Finance Commission, those two, and Mayor Znaimer and myself.
So Councilmember Cacciati still had a motion.
But you
have
just
a-
said he didn't have to make a motion.
Yes, but he didn't say that he was going to pull the motion.
I'll withdraw it.
Okay.
Okay, so that I would make the motion that we reconstitute the Ad Hoc Advisory Committee as a Brown Act body with the composition that I mentioned to discuss the 5-year forecast and the current budget,
As indicated in the staff report.
as indicated in the staff report.
I second. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Braun,
Yes?
Councilmember Caccioti,
No.
Councilmember Primith,
No.
Mayor Pro Tem Donovan,
No,
Mayor Znaimer.
Yes.
Motion fails. I can go on to the next item. Item 15 is the last item in the series, and this is approval of a letter responding to a cease and desist letter of past council action. Same facts as before with respect to us receiving a letter on March 11th from Mr. Elsner stating that the discussion and creation of the advisory committee was not listed on the agenda and as such was a violation of the Brown Act. The difference here between a cure and correct and cease and desist is that the cease and desist looks at past actions and seeks to have the legislative body not repeat that action in the future. As part of the government code provisions with the cease and desist, the city can respond within 30 days by providing an unconditional commitment not to repeat the action that was challenged. That past action was discussing and taking action to create an advisory committee that is a Brown Act body when the matter did not appear on the posted agenda. To avoid unnecessary litigation, and again, there's no admission of any violation of the Brown Act, I'm recommending that the City Council approve the proposed response letter, unconditionally committing that it will cease and desist from and not repeat the challenged past action as described, as I just described. The letter is a form letter. Its context, other than the paragraph that I quoted straight from Mr. Elsner's cease and desist letter, is all statutory language, and I'm happy to answer any questions. And there may be public comment, I guess, on this.
Any public comment?
There is one speaker card, but I believe Ms. Rossi has left.
All right.
No other comment.
Anybody in Zoom?
No, Madam Mayor.
Madam Mayor, I'll move staff recommendation.
I have not closed the public comment period, Mr.
Oh,
Cascioli.
sorry.
Okay, now I can close the public comment period.
Madam Mayor, I'll move staff recommendation for approval.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Councilmember Braun,
No.
Councilmember Cacciardi,
Yes.
Councilmember Primuth,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Donovan,
Yes.
Mayor Znaimer.
No.